I'm 84 years old, and honey, I need to get something off my chest. I spent most of my life thinking that if I was just honest enough, open enough, real enough with people, they would love me better for it. I shared my struggles at the dinner table. I told my coworkers about my money problems. I cried to my girlfriends about my marriage. I told people my dreams before I even had a plan written down. And I thought that made me real. I thought that made me relatable. What it actually did was hand people ammunition they never asked for, and some of them used it. Not always on purpose, but they used it. Here in America, we're raised to believe that talking things out heals everything, that sharing is caring, that opening up is the brave thing to do. And sometimes that's true, but sometimes, and this is what took me 84 years to understand, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is know when to stay quiet. I learned that lesson too late. I don't want you to. Now before you scroll away thinking, what does this old woman know about my life? Let me tell you a little bit about mine. I was born in 1940, raised in a small town in rural Tennessee. We didn't have much. My daddy worked at a textile mill 6 days a week. My mama took in laundry from neighbors just to keep food on the table. We weren't poor in spirit, but we were poor in just about everything else. I got married at 22 to a man I loved deeply. We built a life together over 41 years. Raised 3 children, buried one of them. That's a pain I wouldn't wish on any soul breathing air on this earth. I worked as a school secretary for 30 years. I sat at the center of that building, knew everybody's business, heard everything, saw everything. I survived cancer at 67. I lost my husband Gerald at 79. I've been alone in this house going on 5 years now. So when I sit here and tell you I have learned some things the hard way, I mean that with every single year written on this face. I'm not reading from a book. I'm not repeating something I heard on a podcast. This is just my life and what it taught me. And the biggest lesson didn't come from losing Gerald or surviving cancer or burying my child. It came from something quieter than all of that. It came from learning far too late what not to say and who not to say it to. So let's talk about that. It started small, the way most mistakes do. I remember it was sometime in the late 1970s. Gerald and I were going through a rough patch. Nothing unusual for married people. Money was tight. We weren't communicating well. We were both exhausted from raising kids and working and just trying to keep everything from falling apart. And I did what felt natural to me at the time. I called my best girlfriend, Donna. We'd been close since high school. I trusted her completely. And I sat on that phone for 2 hours telling her everything. Gerald's faults, our fights, things he'd said to me in anger, things I was afraid of. It felt so good in that moment, like releasing pressure from a valve that had been building for months. But here's what happened. Donna never forgot a single word I said. And even after Gerald and I worked things out, and we did, we had many beautiful years after that, Donna looked at him differently. Forever, every holiday, every cookout, every time we were all in the same room together. She'd smile at him, but I could see it behind her eyes. She had a version of my husband that I gave her during my worst moment, and she kept that version long after I had let it go myself. That was just one time, but I did versions of that same mistake for decades, with my money troubles, with my health scares, with my dreams that never quite got off the ground. I kept handing people pieces of myself, and slowly, without even realizing it, I had less and less left that felt truly mine. And that's when I started to understand. Privacy isn't coldness, it isn't distrust. Sometimes it's just wisdom you earn the hard way. So let me share what I wish someone had told me. And I mean really told me, not as advice, as a warning. The first thing, stop sharing your weaknesses with people. I know that sounds harsh, but listen to me carefully. When you tell someone your insecurities, your fears, your failures, the things you're ashamed of, you think you're connecting. And maybe in that moment you are, but that information doesn't disappear when the conversation ends. I once told a woman at church that I struggled with my temper, that I'd said things to my kids I regretted. I thought I was being humble. You know what she did? Every time I had an opinion after that, she'd smile this little smile, like she was quietly reminding herself that I wasn't someone to take seriously. Your weaknesses once shared belong to someone else now, and some people, not all, but some, will file them away and use them later, not always with malice, but they will use them. Second thing, never, and I mean never, talk about your money with people who aren't your spouse or your accountant. Lord, I learned this one painfully. When Gerald got a modest inheritance in the late 80s, I made the mistake of mentioning it to a few family members at Thanksgiving, just casually, the way you do. Within 6 months, we had cousins calling with business ideas, a brother-in-law who needed a loan, a neighbor who suddenly needed help with her roof. And when we said no, because we had our own needs, the coldness that came back at us. Money talk changes how people see you. Either they want something from you, or they quietly resent what you have. There is very little in between. Keep your financial life close to your chest. It protects your relationships more than you know. Third thing, and this one I feel in my bones. Do not go talking about your relationship problems to your friends and family. I already told you about Donna, but it wasn't just Donna. Over the years, I talked to my sister Ruth about arguments Gerald and I had. I talked to my neighbor Beverly about times he disappointed me. I talked to my co-workers once or twice when things got hard, and every single one of those people formed a permanent picture of Gerald based on his worst moments, moments that passed. Moments we moved through together and came out the other side of, but they didn't move through it with us, they just held the snapshot. When Gerald passed, some of those same people said things at the funeral that showed me they never really knew him at all. They only knew the version I accidentally built for them during my weakest moments. Your partner deserves to be seen whole, not just through the lens of your hardest days. Fourth thing, be very careful who you share your pain with. Real pain, deep pain, the kind that lives in your chest at 3 a.m. When I lost my son Thomas, he was 34, a heart condition we didn't catch in time. I was desperate for someone to understand what I was carrying, and so I shared it, widely, openly, with almost anyone who would sit still long enough. And in the beginning, people were tender with me. They held my hand. They brought casseroles. But grief has an expiration date in other people's patience. After a while, I could feel it. The slight shift in the room when I brought Thomas up. The gentle subject changes, and worse than that. Some of those people, without meaning to, started treating me like I was permanently broken, like my identity was now the woman who lost her boy. And every time I was around them, I felt it pulling me back under, back into the darkest part of it. Healing sometimes requires distance from the people who watched you fall apart, because they can't always see you standing back up. Fifth thing, and listen closely to this one because I think it might be the one that costs people the most. Do not share your dreams before they're ready. Oh, I did this so many times. In my 50s, I wanted to open a small alteration shop. I was good with a needle and thread. My mama taught me. I had a little saved. I had a plan forming in my head, and I made the mistake of mentioning it at a family dinner. You would have thought I said I was going to fly to the moon. My brother Earl said the market was too competitive. My sister-in-law said I was too old to start something new. Even Gerald, God rest him, said maybe I should think it through more. None of them were bad people. They just had their own fears, their own limitations. And when you share a dream out loud with people like that, they pour their fears right into it. I never opened that shop. And I'm not saying it definitely would have worked. Maybe it wouldn't have. But I'll never know, because I let other people's doubt become my own before I ever really tried. Your dreams are seeds. And some people, without even knowing it, are frost. Plant in secret, tend in silence, then show people what grew. You know what the loneliest feeling in the world is? It's not being alone in a house. I've gotten used to that. It's sitting across from someone who thinks they know you and realizing they only know the pieces you handed them carelessly over the years, the broken pieces, the scared pieces, the pieces you shared on your worst days, and somewhere along the way, that became who you were to them. There was a woman, one of my oldest friends, Patricia. 40 years we were close, and in my late 70s after Gerald passed, I was struggling, financially a little, emotionally a lot, and I made the mistake of letting her see all of it, every fear, every regret, every doubt about whether my life had amounted to anything. Patricia meant well, I truly believe that, but after a while, she stopped asking how I was doing and started telling me how I was doing. You've always been anxious, Margaret. You've always had a hard time letting things go. That's just how you are. And the terrible thing was, I had given her every piece of evidence she needed to say those things and feel justified. I had handed her my whole case file, every weakness, every wound, every financial worry, every relationship struggle, every shattered dream I'd ever spoken out loud in a moment of trust. And Patricia built a version of me out of all of it, a version I couldn't escape, because every time I was around her, I became that version again. I stopped seeing Patricia about 3 years ago, and I grieved that friendship. I really did. 40 years is not nothing, but I'll tell you something honest. The day I stopped sitting across from someone who only knew my damage, I started remembering that I was more than my damage. That's the thing nobody tells you about oversharing your pain with people. It doesn't just inform them about you. It anchors you to the version of yourself you were trying to leave behind. And I think about the dreams I talked myself out of, the money struggles I announced to the wrong people, the private fights I aired like laundry on a front porch for the whole neighborhood to see. I think about my Thomas and how I let his loss become a public story before I had even begun to understand it privately myself. Some things are too sacred for other people's opinions. Some pain is too deep for casual conversation. Some dreams are too fragile for a dinner table full of well-meaning people with their own broken wings. I'm 84 years old. I have maybe a few good years left, maybe less. You don't know at my age. You just don't know. And when I look back at the moments that hurt me most, it wasn't the cancer, it wasn't the loss, it wasn't the hard years or the lean years or the lonely years. It was the moments I handed the most vulnerable parts of myself to people who weren't equipped to hold them, and then spent years wondering why I felt so exposed. Don't do that to yourself, honey. You are not a confessional booth for other people's comfort. You are allowed to be private. You are allowed to heal quietly. You are allowed to dream without an audience. Guard yourself, not out of fear, out of respect for who you're still becoming. So let me leave you with this. I'm not telling you to close yourself off from the world. I'm not telling you to stop trusting people entirely. That's not a life either. That's just a different kind of lonely. What I'm telling you is be selective, be intentional. Not every feeling needs a witness. Not every struggle needs an audience. Not every dream needs a focus group. And if you need to process something, and Lord knows we all do, there are safer places than the dinner table or the church parking lot or your most talkative friend. Write it down in a journal that nobody else reads. Pray over it if that's your faith. And I know it might sound strange coming from a woman my age, but even these new AI tools people have now, I've tried one or two with my granddaughter Claire's help. There's something to be said for a space where you can think out loud without worrying about being judged, without worrying that what you say today becomes the story someone tells about you tomorrow. Use whatever helps you think clearly. Just be careful who gets to keep what you share, because people remember, even when they don't mean to, even when they love you, they remember. And about resentments, those grudges you're carrying against people who hurt you, please be careful with those too. I know it feels like sharing them brings relief. Sometimes it does for a moment. But resentment talked about too freely has a way of growing instead of shrinking. It finds new oxygen in other people's reactions, and before long, You're not healing from it. You're just maintaining it, keeping it alive in the retelling. Let it go quietly, or work it out directly with the person if you can. But don't make it a story you tell at every gathering. It colors how people see you, and more importantly, it keeps you colored by it. Here is what I know after 84 years on this earth. The things you guard carefully stay yours. Your dignity stays yours. Your story stays yours. Your healing stays yours. Your dreams stay yours long enough to actually grow into something. I wasted so many years feeling exposed without understanding why, feeling like people saw me but didn't see me, like I was somehow less than I used to be and I couldn't figure out where I'd gone. I know now where I went. I gave myself away, a little at a time, in conversations I thought were harmless, in moments I thought were just honesty. Don't give yourself away like that. You are worth protecting, not just your reputation, not just your finances, not just your relationships. You, the quiet, private, still becoming version of you that nobody else has full access to yet. Keep some of that sacred, because the most whole I have ever felt in my life was the day I stopped needing everyone to know everything about me and just let myself be. If something I said today sat with you, maybe pass it along to someone you love, a daughter, a son, a young friend who's carrying too much out loud right now. Not because this old woman needs the attention, but because I genuinely believe somebody out there needed to hear this today. And if you want more of these conversations, just an old woman sharing what 8 decades of living actually feels like from the inside, there's a subscribe button somewhere on this page. I'll be here, Lord willing.